sister-in-law played a mean joke that reminded me of a painful past experience. I got really upset, and my family decided to stop talking to her. Now, she's trying to make herself seem like the victim and turn everyone against me. Let me tell you about the situation. My husband, Aaron, and I have been together for 3 years, but we've known each other for 6. He has an older sister named Sophie, who's caused all the drama in our family recently. About 3 weeks ago, Sophie asked if I wanted to go on a vacation to Spain with her, my mother-in-law, and my husband's cousin Nadia. Nadia and I are close because we're first cousins, and we both went to the same high school. At first, I wasn't too keen on the idea of going on a trip with Sophie, but Nadia really wanted me to come, so I agreed. Sophie, who's pretty wealthy thanks to her neurosurgeon husband, was covering the cost of the flight tickets and hotel stay for our vacation. She's not bothered by the expenses because her husband's job brings in a lot of money. While she technically runs an event management company, it practically runs itself, and she doesn't really need to work. She just keeps up appearances to avoid being seen as a socialite who doesn't do anything. Despite having a degree in literature, she's never used it and feels like college was a waste of time, except for the part where she met her husband. Aaron mentioned that Sophie has always been spoiled by her parents, getting whatever she wanted since childhood. This attitude has carried into adulthood, with her thinking she can manipulate people with sulking and the silent treatment. Her husband and parents encourage this behavior, but Aaron, Nadia, and I don't tolerate it. While I've never been a fan of Sophie, I've tolerated her for the sake of family since she's never been directly mean to me. So I agreed to go on the trip with Sophie. And finally, 3 days ago, we were getting ready to leave. Since the airport was quite far from my house, I left early and ended up arriving about half an hour before our scheduled departure. With time to spare, I decided to pass the time by scrolling through my phone. Unfortunately, that morning my phone's vibration motor had stopped working, so I wasn't getting notifications like usual. I didn't have time to fix it before leaving, planning to address the issue once I got back from the holiday. Luckily, I happened to be on my phone when I received a message. It was from Sophie, who sent me a screenshot of a text conversation she had received from an unknown number. The message included an image and some text. Curious, I downloaded the image to see what it was about, as it seemed odd for Sophie to send me someone else's conversation. When I opened the image, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was a picture taken right outside my house, showing someone holding a pair of scissors in their left hand. Almost immediately, I received another message from the same unknown number. "Let your brother's wife know I'm back." Sophie explained that she had received this text a few minutes ago and was worried about Aaron's safety. Hearing this sent me into panic mode. You see, I have a past experience of being stalked, which was the most frightening time of my life during college. I had a stalker who would take pictures of me from behind and send them to me all day. He didn't message me directly but used fake social media accounts to communicate. He'd suggest meeting spots but never showed up. Despite being trained in jiu-jitsu and never going out unarmed, I felt extremely scared. This went on for 2 months, and I kept it to myself out of fear. When I tried to stop him, he threatened me, saying I'd be in trouble if I told anyone. He even sent me a similar picture from outside my parents' house, holding scissors to intimidate me further. Terrified, I didn't confide in anyone and just hoped for safety during classes. After a few weeks, I only left my dorm for necessities, and eventually, I stopped going out altogether because of the constant pictures. It wasn't until my roommate noticed something was off and pushed me to tell her that I finally opened up. Together, we went to the police to report the situation. Within a few days, they made an arrest, and surprisingly, it turned out to be a senior from the computer engineering department. He had a history of making girls uncomfortable on campus. Unfortunately, he targeted me due to his interest, using his cyber safety expertise to gather information from my public social media accounts. He was also stalking another girl who hadn't spoken up for the same reasons I hadn't. Once caught, he was expelled from college, putting an end to his harassment. Though his parents took him back home after a few days, he left the country soon after. It's been years since then, and I had almost forgotten about him until that image brought back all the fear. Without hesitation, I called 911. I urgently called Sophie to come over to my house right away. But I forgot to mention that I had already called the police because my priority was warning Aaron. Quickly, I hailed a cab and started frantically calling my husband, knowing he was likely still asleep at 8 o'clock in the morning, especially on the weekend. Despite the challenge, he eventually answered on the third attempt, sounding groggy from just waking up. With no time to waste, I instructed him to grab something heavy for protection, lock himself in the bedroom, and barricade the door. Although he seemed confused at first, mentioning the picture made him understand, and he followed my directions. I stayed on the phone with him throughout the 45-minute cab ride home, even as the police arrived and searched the house. During this time, I didn't check my phone, and without the vibration feature, I didn't receive any reminders from notifications. When I arrived home, the police were wrapping up their inspection, finding no one suspicious nearby. I was in the midst of a full-blown panic attack, and it took several minutes and half a bottle of water to finally calm down. The officers mentioned that they had checked the phone number in their system, which only came back with the name Thea Wilson. While this wasn't my stalker's name, it was entirely possible that he used a fake name for his phone number. At that moment, I had completely forgotten about Sophie and my phone, as my main relief was knowing Aaron was safe. The police informed us that they had dispatched 2 officers to apprehend the sender, following leads from the cybercrime department. Aaron and I rushed to the nearest police station, where shortly after our arrival, Sophie was brought in by 2 officers, crying uncontrollably. I'm sure many of you have already figured out what happened. And unfortunately, it's exactly what you're thinking. For some reason, Sophie thought it would be amusing to prank me this morning before our trip. A few days ago, she met a friend of mine from college, and during their conversation about families, my past stalker came up. This incident had made me somewhat infamous around campus, and despite not enjoying the attention, it seemed to have stuck in people's minds. After learning about my stalker, Sophie decided it would be funny to prank me on the morning of our flight. She used a phone number she had obtained a few days ago under a fake name specifically for this purpose. She texted herself an image that she had taken a few days prior, right in front of our house, holding scissors with an outstretched arm. Looking back at the photo, I realized the hand didn't belong to a man at all. Sophie had gone as far as removing her nail polish, making it difficult for me to notice in the midst of my panic. Fear clouded my judgment, causing me to overlook key details that hinted it was all a prank. But in the end, the trauma from my college experience overshadowed everything. The thought of reliving it terrified me, especially when Aaron's safety was at stake. It wasn't a laughing matter. Our ordeal ended with an embarrassing trip to the police station, where Sophie received a warning. Aaron and I had wasted time and energy worrying about my stalker's return when there was nothing to fear. Leaving the station, I was seething with anger. I unleashed my fury on Sophie for over 15 minutes, not caring as she broke down in tears. She had belittled something deeply traumatic and frightening for me, and her foolishness had embarrassed us all. She could cry all she wanted, but I refused to feel any sympathy. Aaron and I drove home that day, and during the ride, I filled Nadia in on the debacle. Even she decided to cancel the trip because, let's face it, nobody wants to spend time with someone as thoughtless as Sophie. The whole day was a struggle as I tried to calm my nerves after the chaotic morning and the lingering fear from the stalker scare. Even after learning it was just a prank, the terror lingered, bringing back memories of the darkest time in college. I kept mostly to myself that day, only speaking to Aaron and Nadia. I switched off my phone, needing a break from the chaos. It wasn't until 2 days later that I discovered my inbox flooded with messages from my mother-in-law and Sophie, accusing me of overreacting to the prank and influencing Nadia to cancel the vacation. I hadn't instructed Nadia to back out. I had only shared what Sophie had done. Her decision was her own. Yet Nadia and Aaron managed to rally the family against Sophie, including her own father. Despite their belief, I hadn't spread any word about the incident. It was Nadia and Aaron who informed others, leading to the family's decision to cut ties with Sophie. They claim I owe Sophie an apology for what they see as a harmless prank, but the consequences she faces are real and painful. She's facing consequences from her own family, and now she's painting herself as the victim. After reading their messages, I discussed it with Aaron, who assured me there's no need for sympathy towards her. Neither he nor Nadia regret informing the family about the incident. What she did was undeniably cruel, far from a harmless prank. It wouldn't have been harmless if it hadn't triggered my past trauma to the point of incapacitating me for an entire day. We're all aware of the toll it took on my mental well-being. I fully agree, it wasn't harmless at all, leaving me paralyzed with anxiety. She didn't even apologize, only cried, so expecting sympathy seems hypocritical. She deserves the consequences of her actions. Initially, I planned to ignore her messages after discussing it with Aaron, as I had no desire to waste my time reasoning with her. However, she persisted in texting me repeatedly, clearly attempting to guilt-trip me into apologizing and restoring her standing within the family. It became increasingly irritating, and in a moment of frustration, I responded. I expressed my contempt for her insensitive and cruel prank, highlighting that she alone was responsible for her current situation. I clarified that I played no role in the family members cutting ties with her, though I wished I had, as it would have provided some satisfaction in removing negativity from the family. I concluded the message by referencing her weight, an area of insecurity for her. While I typically refrain from body shaming due to my own experiences with bullying, I chose to target her vulnerability in this instance to make her feel remorse. Perhaps my response was harsh, but it provided a sense of catharsis after enduring her relentless messages. Despite previously tolerating her spoiled and insensitive behavior, this incident exceeded my threshold for tolerance. After sending the text, I put my phone aside and tried to distract myself by watching a movie. It wasn't until 3 hours later that I checked my messages and found a new one from Sophie. She mentioned considering me a good friend and expected forgiveness without having to beg for it. While her message seemed to imply an apology, I found it confusing. She then criticized my response, suggesting that if I were going to be rude, I should have ignored her entirely instead of intentionally hurting her. Reflecting on her words, I began to wonder if I had gone too far. Despite my dislike for Sophie, I acknowledged that she had a point. Perhaps I shouldn't have said some of the things I did. However, her refusal to take responsibility for her actions and her attempts to shift the blame onto me only fueled my anger. I regretted stooping to shaming her for her weight, knowing firsthand how hurtful that could be. Nevertheless, I felt justified in calling her out for her behavior. Aaron believed I shouldn't apologize, asserting that Sophie deserved to be confronted. He didn't think I should sympathize with her at all. Nadia, on the other hand, felt I may have been too harsh. Feeling torn and unsure of how to proceed, I turned to the Reddit community for unbiased advice. I didn't want to resort to the same tactics as Sophie to seek revenge. While I value Aaron and Nadia's perspectives, I needed impartial judgment considering the circumstances. So I'm here seeking guidance after Scylla, in her attempt to prank me, inadvertently belittled my past trauma, prompting me to insult her insecurities about her weight. Update 1. I've taken in all the feedback from the comments on my original post, and while I appreciate everyone's viewpoints, I couldn't shake off the guilt I felt about my comment regarding Sophie's weight. So I decided to apologize to her for that specific remark. I stand by everything else I said, but attacking someone for their appearance didn't sit right with me, especially knowing firsthand the pain of being bullied for things beyond my control. I sent the apology just 5 minutes ago, although she hasn't opened it yet. Regardless, I'll be okay, even if she doesn't accept it, because I know I did what I could to make amends. As for my mother-in-law, I'm not on speaking terms with her. It baffles me why she rushed to Sophie's defense when she knows her actions were wrong. Her texts were all about understanding my frustration, but then she expected me to apologize to Sophie, which doesn't add up. It feels like she's trying to guilt-trip me into feeling sorry for Sophie, but I'm certain she wouldn't have the same reaction if the roles were reversed. Aaron wasn't thrilled about my decision to apologize, but he believes in my good intentions. Nadia, on the other hand, is supportive and proud of me. So overall, I'm at peace with my decision. Update 2. Sophie has just responded to my apology. It took several hours for her to reply, but about half an hour ago, she finally did. She said it was fine, but she didn't expect anything better from me anyway. Sophie admitted to feeling a bit shocked, but understands that we were never friends and won't be in the future. On a positive note, she did express regret for attempting to prank me and for using such a traumatic experience against me. She claimed that if she had known the consequences would be so severe, she wouldn't have gone through with the prank. Personally, I believe pranks like that are disrespectful and should never be carried out, regardless of the circumstances. However, I appreciate the apology, even if it came across as passive-aggressive. Something is better than nothing, right? Now I can let go of the guilt I felt about my own harsh words and move forward. This incident marks the end of Sophie's presence in our lives, and that's the silver lining in this whole ordeal. Update 3. Hi everyone! It's been about a month since my last update, and I have some exciting news to share. Last week, Nadia discovered that she's pregnant. To celebrate, we organized a big pregnancy announcement party and invited all our loved ones. Well, almost everyone. Sophie was noticeably absent because she's been out of touch ever since being cut off from the family. She temporarily deactivated her social media accounts and went off the grid. However, Aaron reached out to his dad, who assured us that Sophie was okay. She just needed a break from social interactions. During the party, though, Sophie sent Nadia a text extending her best wishes for a happy and healthy pregnancy. However, the message had a hint of Sophie's trademark passive-aggressiveness. She expressed a desire to be present at such a joyous occasion, but conveniently ignored the fact that she wasn't invited. Instead, she subtly implied that we were the negative influences in her life and that she was prioritizing her own well-being. We found her message amusing and decided not to share it with anyone else at the party. It's absurd how desperately she wanted to be included but refused to apologize for her actions. Despite hoping that her social media hiatus would lead to personal growth, it seems Sophie remains unchanged. Oh well, at least her message provided us with some entertainment.
My name is Kara, and I found myself thrust into a world where family ties felt like chains. I married Mark, the man I loved, with dreams of building a beautiful life together. But little did I know that his family home would be the setting for a harrowing journey during my pregnancy. Mark, tall and strong, had a kind heart, but he seemed to struggle between his loyalty to me and his family's expectations. His father, Robert, was a warm and gentle man, always ready to lend a helping hand. However, his mother, Sarah, and his younger sister, Emily, were a different story altogether. One evening, Mark had to go out for some urgent work, leaving me alone with his mother and sister. I was heavily pregnant, but that didn't stop them from assigning me endless chores. Sarah scoffed, "You're just sitting around all day anyway, might as well do something useful." "But I'm exhausted and I need rest," I pleaded. Emily joined in. "Oh, stop exaggerating. Pregnancy is not a disease. We all went through it and we managed just fine." I sighed, knowing it was pointless to argue with them. They had an unyielding belief that being pregnant was an excuse to exploit me, rather than an experience that warranted care and support. As days turned into weeks, their demands only increased. Meanwhile, Mark was mostly away at work, oblivious to the plight I faced in his absence. One afternoon, when I couldn't bear the strain any longer, I sought solace in Robert's company. I found him in the backyard, tending to his beloved garden. "Hey, Kara," he greeted me with a warm smile. "How are you holding up, my dear?" Tears welled up in my eyes as I poured my heart out to him about the unfair treatment I received from Sarah and Emily. Robert listened intently, his expression a mix of concern and understanding. "Nobody should be made to work like this during pregnancy," he said, shaking his head. "You should be resting and taking care of yourself and those precious little ones inside you." "I wish they understood that," I whispered, wiping away a tear. Robert's eyes softened. and he placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry, Kara. I'll talk to them and try to make them see reason. You don't need to shoulder this burden alone." His words were like a balm to my soul, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The days turned into months, and Robert's support became my lifeline. He would help with the household chores, ease my discomfort, and encourage me to focus on my well-being. But as my pregnancy progressed, so did the tension between Mark and his family, particularly Sarah and Emily, and unbeknownst to them, their actions were pushing Mark away from their toxic influence. One evening, after Mark discovered the truth about how they treated me, he confronted them. "I can't believe you treated my wife like that while she was carrying our babies," he yelled, his anger palpable. Sarah tried to justify their actions. "We just wanted her to contribute to the household chores like any responsible adult." "But she's pregnant. She needed your support, not your demands," Mark retorted, his voice firm. Emily chimed in. "It's not like she was doing anything important. We do all the work when she's not here anyway." Mark shook his head in disbelief. "No, that's not the point. She's my wife, and I won't let you mistreat her any longer." Life within my husband's family home had become a never-ending cycle of exhausting chores and unrelenting expectations. The weight of my growing belly seemed to amplify their demands, as if my pregnancy was merely an inconvenience to their comfortable existence. It was during this chapter of my life that I truly began to understand the burden of expectation placed upon my shoulders. Each day started with Sarah and Emily instructing me on my duties, as if I were an employee rather than a woman nurturing life within me. "Make sure you scrub the floors thoroughly, Kara," Sarah commanded, her tone laced with superiority. Emily chimed in, her voice dripping with condescension, "And don't forget to dust all the surfaces. We can't have a speck of dirt in this house." "But I'm exhausted, and my body needs rest," I pleaded, hoping they would show some compassion. Sarah scoffed. "Rest? What do you think this is? A vacation? You're perfectly capable of doing these tasks," Emily added, a hint of mockery in her voice. "If you can't handle a few chores, how will you manage when the babies arrive?" Their words stung like 1,000 needles, pricking at my already vulnerable emotions. They saw me as nothing more than a vessel for their grandchildren, disregarding my own well-being and the toll pregnancy takes on a woman's body and mind. As the days turned into weeks, the burden grew heavier. The exhaustion settled deep within my bones, and the weight of their expectations threatened to suffocate me. All the while, Mark remained oblivious, consumed by his work and seemingly unaware of the torment I endured. It was during one particularly overwhelming afternoon that I reached my breaking point. The heaviness of my belly combined with the heaviness of their demands became too much to bear. Tears streamed down my face as I collapsed onto the couch, feeling utterly defeated. Robert, my father-in-law, found me in this vulnerable state. Concern etched across his face. He sat down beside me, offering a comforting presence. "What's the matter, Kara?" he asked gently, his voice full of empathy. I hiccuped between sobs, struggling to find the words. I can't keep up with their expectations anymore. I'm tired, Robert, so tired." He placed a hand on my trembling shoulder, his touch a lifeline of compassion. "I understand, Kara. They don't realize the toll this takes on you. Pregnancy is a time when you should be nurtured and cared for, not treated as a servant." I nodded, grateful for his understanding. I just wish Mark would see it too, that he would stand up for me. Robert's eyes softened, reflecting a deep understanding of the situation. "Give him time, Kara. Sometimes it takes a wake-up call to realize what's truly important. But know that I'm here for you. Lean on me whenever you need to." In that moment, the burden felt a little lighter, knowing I had an ally in Robert. He became the anchor that kept me grounded, reminding me that I deserved more than the relentless expectations thrust upon me. But little did I know that this burden of expectation would soon clash with the fire of determination within my husband, Mark. A clash that would set us on a path toward change and liberation, forever altering the course of our lives. In the midst of the storm that raged within the walls of my husband's family home, there was a beacon of support that shone brightly. My father-in-law, Robert. He stood as a pillar of strength, offering solace and kindness when I needed it most. As the weeks went by, Robert's support became an essential lifeline, a refuge from the constant demands and mistreatment I endured. He would often step in, easing my burden and providing the care that was sorely lacking from Sarah and Emily. One evening, as I struggled to complete my assigned chores, Robert appeared by my side. He glanced at the long list of tasks and let out a sympathetic sigh. "This is too much for you, Kara," he said, his voice tinged with concern. "You shouldn't have to bear this alone." I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. "I don't understand why they treat me like this. Don't they realize the toll it takes on me and the babies?" Robert's hand gently squeezed my shoulder, offering a small measure of comfort. "Sometimes people can be blind to the pain they cause. But I see it, Kara. I see your strength and the love you carry within you." As the days passed, Robert's support extended beyond just offering kind words. He actively participated in lightening my load, taking on tasks that would have been overwhelming for me in my pregnant state. He would wash dishes, sweep the floors, and even prepare meals, ensuring that I had the rest I so desperately needed. One sunny afternoon, I found myself sitting in the backyard, a respite from the chaos within the house. Robert joined me, a tray of freshly baked cookies in his hands. "I thought these might lift your spirits a bit," he said, offering me a warm smile. I took a cookie, savoring the sweet taste. "Thank you, Robert. Your support means the world to me. I don't know what I would do without you." He chuckled softly, his eyes filled with compassion. "You don't have to thank me, Kara. Family should always take care of one another, and consider me your family." His words resonated deeply within me, touching a part of my heart that had felt neglected for far too long. In that moment, I realized that I wasn't alone in this struggle. I had found an ally, a source of support that gave me the strength to face each day with renewed determination. As my pregnancy progressed, Robert's role became even more crucial. He encouraged me to prioritize my well-being, reminding me that self-care was essential for both me and the babies. His unwavering belief in my ability to navigate through the challenges instilled a newfound confidence within me. Together, we formed a bond that transcended the confines of a traditional father-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. He became the father figure I had always longed for, the one who showed me kindness and compassion in the face of adversity. After months of enduring the oppressive environment within my husband's family home, Mark, my loving husband, had been silently observing the mistreatment I endured at the hands of his mother and sister. The weight of his guilt and realization finally prompted him to take a stand. Determined to protect our growing family, he made a decision that would alter the course of our lives. One evening, as the sun cast a warm glow upon our tired faces, Mark gathered his mother, Sarah, and his sister, Emily, in the living room. A sense of gravity hung in the air as he prepared to address the deep-rooted issues that had plagued us for far too long. "I can no longer stand by and watch the way you treat my wife," Mark began, his voice resolute but tinged with sadness. "Kara is carrying our children, and she deserves nothing but love, care, and support during this precious time." Sarah looked taken aback, her eyes reflecting a mix of surprise and defiance. "We were just trying to teach her responsibility," she muttered, her voice wavering. Mark's voice grew firmer as he continued. "Responsibility should never come at the expense of someone's well-being, especially during pregnancy. Kara deserves better than this." Emily shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes avoiding mine. I didn't mean to cause her harm," she stammered. Mark's gaze softened, and he reached out to hold my hand, a silent show of solidarity. It's not just about you, Emily. It's about all of us recognizing the importance of empathy and understanding. Sarah's face contorted with desperation, her voice tinged with a hint of fear. Please don't leave alone. I can't live alone. I have no money. But Mark stood his ground, his determination unyielding. This is not about revenge or punishment. It's about creating a safe and loving environment for our family. We're moving out and we're going to build a life that centers around love, respect, and support, and just like that, the decision was made. We were no longer bound by the suffocating chains of that family home. We were embarking on a journey towards a brighter future where our voices would be heard and our well-being cherished. Months later, settled into our new home, the wounds of the past still fresh but healing. A phone call disrupted our newfound peace. It was Sarah pleading for help, their consequences catching up with them. We're being evicted, she sobbed, her voice strained with desperation. We have no place to go, no money to survive. Mark listened quietly, a mix of emotions swirling within him. I could see the struggle in his eyes as he grappled with his sense of duty and the pain caused by his family's actions. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but resolute. I'm sorry, Mom, but we can't help you. The consequences of your actions are not ours to bear. This is the result of the choices you made. It was a bittersweet moment, the culmination of the transformation that had been set in motion. We had found our voice, our strength, and in doing so, we had gained the power to stand up for ourselves and protect our newfound happiness. Months had passed since we cut ties with Mark's mother and sister, choosing to prioritize our own well-being and the well-being of our growing family. Our new home was filled with warmth and love, a stark contrast to the coldness we had left behind. One evening, as the wind whispered through the trees outside, we received an unexpected phone call. It was Sarah, Mark's mother, her voice trembling with desperation. Kara, Mark, please, I beg of you, she pleaded, her tone laden with sorrow. We're in dire straits. We've been evicted and we have nowhere to go. I can't bear the thought of being alone without money. Mark listened silently, his face a tapestry of conflicting emotions. The wounds inflicted by his mother and sister were still raw, but the ties of familial love tugged at his heart. Sarah continued, her voice choked with tears. I know we treated you both terribly. We were blind to the pain we caused. Please give us another chance. We'll change. We'll do better. We can't survive without your help. The room fell into a heavy silence as Mark wrestled with his own inner turmoil. It was a pivotal moment, a test of our resilience and capacity for forgiveness. I placed a gentle hand on Mark's arm, a silent gesture of support. Remember, Mark, how they made me suffer, how they belittled me even when I was carrying our precious babies. This is a chance for them to truly understand the consequences of their actions. Mark nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of empathy and determination. Mom, we can't deny the pain you caused. We needed to leave for the sake of our family's well-being. It's time for you to face the consequences of your choices. Sarah's voice cracked, the weight of her words laden with regret. I understand, Mark. I never realized the depth of the harm I caused until it was too late. Please know that I'm truly sorry. The conversation ended with a heavy sigh, leaving us to grapple with the aftermath of our decision. It was a bittersweet moment as we witnessed the consequences unfold, knowing that true change could only come from within. In the days that followed, Mark and I grappled with a mix of emotions. We questioned whether we had made the right choice, whether our refusal to help was an act of justice or a missed opportunity for reconciliation. But as time passed, we found solace in the knowledge that our decision was rooted in self-preservation and the protection of our family. We had chosen a path that prioritized our well-being, learning that forgiveness could only come when the wounds had truly healed. With the weight of the past gradually lifting from our shoulders, our new home became a sanctuary of love, warmth, and tranquility. Each day brought us closer to the realization that we were no longer defined by the toxic environment we had left behind. As the sun cast a golden hue upon our surroundings, I sat on the porch, cradling our twin infants in my arms. The air was filled with a sense of contentment as I watched Mark approach, a smile playing on his lips. He sat down beside me, his gaze filled with a mixture of pride and gratitude. "Can you believe how far we've come?" he whispered, his voice filled with awe. "We've created a life for ourselves, one that revolves around love, support, and freedom." I nodded, a sense of peace washing over me. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. We've built something beautiful out of the ashes of our past. Mark took my hand in his touch reassuring, and we did it together. We faced the darkness head on, and now we get to savor the sweetness of our freedom. As we sat there, embracing the serenity of the moment, the phone rang, briefly disrupting our tranquil reverie. Mark answered, his brow furrowing in confusion. After a brief conversation, he hung up, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "That was Sarah," he said, his voice tinged with surprise. "She called to apologize. She said she's finally realizing the depth of the pain she caused and that she's committed to changing for the better." I looked at Mark, a glimmer of hope reflected in my eyes. "Do you think she means it?" Mark shrugged, a mixture of skepticism and cautious optimism in his expression. "Only time will tell, but perhaps this is the beginning of her own journey of self-reflection and growth." We sat there, contemplating the possibilities that lay ahead, knowing that the wounds of the past would take time to fully heal. But in that moment, we chose to focus on our own journey, on the love that surrounded us, and on the incredible strength we had discovered within ourselves.
I never imagined that my life would take such a dramatic turn. My name is Sarah, and I was fortunate enough to meet the love of my life at a young age. We got married and began our life together in the comfort of my parents' house. Yes, it might seem unconventional, but it was our way of saving money and starting a future together. Living with us was my younger sister, Emily. She had recently turned 21, and since we had no parents, we felt responsible for taking care of her. Little did I know that this arrangement would create friction and test the strength of our family ties. One sunny afternoon, as I was preparing lunch in the cozy kitchen, Alex walked in with a stern expression on his face. He was a man of few words, but his body language spoke volumes. I could tell something was bothering him. "Hey, honey," I greeted him, trying to break the tension. "Is everything all right?" Alex sighed heavily and leaned against the countertop, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Sarah, we need to talk about Emily," he said, his voice laced with frustration. My heart sank as I anticipated the topic of conversation. Emily and Alex had never seen eye to eye, and their constant clashes were putting a strain on our household. "What happened this time?" I asked, bracing myself for the answer. "She's becoming unbearable, Sarah," Alex replied, his voice tinged with irritation. "I can't stand her living under the same roof with us. We need to find a way to make her leave." I stared at him, taken aback by the intensity of his words. I understood that their relationship was strained, but the idea of asking Emily to leave seemed cruel and heartless. She was family, and families stuck together through thick and thin. "But Alex," I pleaded, my voice filled with concern, "she's just a young girl who needs our support. We can't turn our backs on her." He turned to face me, his eyes blazing with frustration. "Sarah, I know she's your sister, but she's driving me insane. We can't have a happy marriage with her around. It's time she starts taking responsibility for her own life." Tears welled up in my eyes as I grappled with the weight of his words. I loved Alex, but I couldn't bear the thought of abandoning my sister, especially when she needed us the most. "I can't just ask her to leave, Alex," I said, my voice trembling. "We made a promise to take care of her, and I won't break that promise. We need to find a way to work things out." He looked at me, his features softening slightly as he realized the pain in my eyes. After a moment of silence, he let out a sigh and nodded. "Okay, Sarah," he said, his voice softer now. "We'll try to find a way, but something needs to change." For the sake of our marriage and our sanity, I reached out and grabbed his hand, offering a small smile. "Thank you, Alex. I know it won't be easy, but we'll find a solution. We always do." Little did I know that the challenges ahead would test our resolve and push us to our limits. Our promising beginning would soon be overshadowed by darkness, forcing us to confront the demons within our own home. My husband Alex had always been a challenging person to deal with. His irascible nature made it difficult for him to get along with others, especially Emily. They seemed to clash at every opportunity, and it made our household feel like a battlefield. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the living room windows, tension hung in the air like an invisible veil. Emily and Alex were in the midst of yet another heated argument, their voices rising with each passing second. I stood in the doorway, my heart sinking at the sight before me. It seemed as though their differences had reached a breaking point, and I desperately wanted to find a way to bridge the gap. "Emily, please," I pleaded, my voice tinged with concern. "Try to understand where Alex is coming." She crossed her arms defiantly, her eyes burning with frustration. "I am an adult, Sarah. I shouldn't have to live by his rules. I can make my own decisions." Alex, standing with his arms folded, couldn't contain his anger any longer. "You're acting like a child, Emily," he snapped. "Living under our roof means respecting our boundaries and abiding by our rules. But I'm not a child," Emily retorted, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "I deserve some freedom and independence." I stepped forward, trying to mediate the situation. "We all need to find a way to coexist peacefully," I said, my voice calm but filled with determination. "Emily, I understand your desire for independence, but we also need to respect Alex's concerns." Emily's eyes filled with tears, and she looked at me, her voice cracking. "Sarah, you don't understand. It feels like I'm suffocating in this house. I love you, but I can't live like this anymore." The weight of her words settled heavily on my shoulders. I loved both my sister and my husband, but finding a balance between their conflicting needs seemed impossible. Our once promising beginning now felt like a fragile web ready to unravel. "Emily," I said, my voice filled with both love and sadness. "We're family. We need to find a way to make this work. Let's sit down and have a calm conversation about our expectations and boundaries. We owe it to each other." There was a moment of silence as Emily and Alex exchanged hesitant glances. Slowly, their anger began to subside, and the realization of the toll their disagreements were taking on our family started to sink in. "Okay," Emily finally conceded, her voice softer now. "Let's talk." As we gathered around the living room, the walls seemed to close in, suffocating us with the weight of unresolved conflicts. But we were determined to find a way forward, to mend the strained relationships and create a harmonious home. Little did we know that the events about to unfold would shake the foundations of our family, pushing us to confront the darkest corners of our lives and forcing us to make choices that would alter our paths forever. As the days passed, the tension in our home seemed to escalate, reaching a crescendo on that fateful evening. The clock ticked closer to 10 o'clock, the time by which Emily was supposed to return home, as per Alex's decree. I paced nervously in the living room, my eyes darting towards the front door with every passing minute. Alex's frustration grew palpable, his impatience bubbling to the surface. "Where is she, Sarah?" he barked, his voice filled with anger. "She knows she's supposed to be back by now." My heart raced as I tried to calm him down. "She's probably just running late, Alex," I offered, my voice filled with concern. "Let's give her some more time." He clenched his fists, his jaw tight with resentment. "No, this has gone on for too long," he growled. "She needs to learn her lesson." I watched helplessly as he stormed towards the front door, determination etched across his face. I knew I had to intervene to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. "Alex, please," I pleaded, my voice trembling with fear. "Let's not confront her like this. It won't solve anything." He turned to face me, his eyes blazing with anger. "She needs to understand that there are consequences for her actions," he spat. "I won't let her walk all over us." Before I could utter another word, the door slammed shut, the echo reverberating through the house. panic surged through me as I realized the gravity of the situation. I had to protect Emily from Alex's mounting rage, no matter the cost. Half an hour later, Alex called my mom. I couldn't hear what he said, but my mom's face darkened. She silently put the phone on speaker, and at the same moment, screams and thuds came from the phone. Time seemed to stand still as I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking with a mixture of fear and determination. With trembling fingers, I dialed the emergency number, my voice quivering as I gave them our address and the urgency of the situation. "Please," I implored, tears streaming down my face. "You need to come quickly. My husband, he's out of control." The voice on the other end reassured me, promising help was on the way. But the minutes that followed felt like an eternity, my heart pounding in my chest as I anxiously awaited their arrival. Finally, the sound of sirens pierced through the night, the flashing lights casting an eerie glow on our quiet suburban street. Relief washed over me as I realized that help had arrived, that Emily would be safe. As I stood on the porch, my gaze fixed on the approaching police cars, I couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt. Guilt for not being able to protect Emily from the storm that had engulfed our lives. Guilt for allowing the situation to escalate to this point. But deep down, I knew that I had made the right choice. The choice to put Emily's safety above all else, to break the cycle of violence and protect our family from the darkness that threatened to consume us. Little did I know that this would be the turning point, the moment that shattered the illusions of a promising beginning and forced us to confront the harsh reality that lay beneath the surface. The battle for our family's well-being had just begun, and we were about to face challenges that would test our strength, resilience, and love in ways we never could have imagined. The aftermath of that tumultuous night left our family reeling, with emotions running high and a lingering sense of unease in the air. The repercussions of Alex's explosive outburst reverberated through the walls of our once peaceful home. And from station, a few hours after the chaos had subsided, my phone rang and I anxiously answered, hoping to hear Emily's voice on the other end. It was her. The tremor in her voice was unmistakable. "As Sarah," she stammered, her words punctuated by shallow breaths. "I need to tell you what happened." My heart sank, and I held my breath, preparing myself for the painful truth that awaited. "Alex, he stormed into the house where I was staying," Emily continued, her voice filled with both fear and anger. "He started yelling at everyone, blaming me for not coming home on time. And then he attacked me, Sarah, with his fists." My hand flew to my mouth in horror, tears streaming down my face. The reality of the abuse Emily had endured struck me like a physical blow. How could the man I loved become a monster capable of such violence? "Oh, Emily," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I should have protected you." She sniffled on the other end of the line, her voice shaking. "It's not your fault, Sarah. None of us could have predicted this. Just promise me you'll stay safe." My mind raced with conflicting emotions, but a newfound resolve surged within me. No longer would I be a passive bystander. It was time to take control of our lives and ensure our safety. "I promise, Emily," I vowed, my voice filled with determination. "We will get through this together. I won't let anyone hurt us anymore." And with those words, a flicker of hope ignited within me. I knew that our journey toward healing would be long and arduous, but the bond between Emily and me would serve as an unbreakable anchor. These days turned into weeks, and the wheels of justice began to turn. Alex's actions could not go unpunished, and the legal system took its course. His trial loomed ahead, and the weight of his abusive behavior would finally be addressed in the eyes of the law. The day of the trial arrived, and with it, a mix of anticipation, anxiety, and a renewed sense of determination. We were prepared to face the man who had caused us so much pain, to confront him in the courtroom and seek justice for the wounds he had inflicted upon our lives. As we sat in the solemn courtroom, the air thick with tension, I could feel the weight of the proceedings bearing down on me. Emily sat beside me, her grip on my hand providing solace in the midst of the storm. The prosecution presented a compelling case, painting a vivid picture of the abuse Emily had endured at the hands of her brother-in-law. Witness testimonies, medical reports, and photographs laid bare the extent of the physical and emotional trauma she had suffered. Then came the moment when Emily took the stand, her voice steady but filled with the pain of her experience. The room fell silent as she recounted the events that led to that fateful night, her words piercing through the hearts of those present. "Your Honor," she began, her voice carrying a mixture of strength and vulnerability, "I never thought I would find myself here, testifying against someone I once loved. But the truth is, love shouldn't hurt like this. No one should have to endure the fear and pain that I went through." The defense lawyer attempted to undermine her testimony, painting a distorted picture of the events and attempting to cast doubt on her credibility. But Emily stood firm, her determination shining through. As the trial continued, the weight of the evidence stacked against Alex became undeniable. The jury deliberated, and it seemed like an eternity as we awaited their decision. Finally, the moment arrived. The judge's voice filled the courtroom as he announced the verdict. "Guilty?" The relief that washed over us was palpable, a collective exhale in the face of justice served. Outside the courtroom, the media buzzed, hungry for a story of triumph over adversity. Emily and I stood together, facing a barrage of questions, determined to use our voices to shed light on the realities of domestic violence. When asked how we felt about the outcome, Emily's response rang out, her voice steady and unwavering. "This trial was not just about seeking justice for myself," she said, her eyes filled with determination. "It was about shining a light on the darkness that so many others face. I hope that our story inspires change and empowers others to break free from the cycle of abuse." In the aftermath of the trial, we took a moment to breathe, to absorb the reality of the verdict and what it meant for our lives moving forward. The prison sentence handed down to Alex brought a sense of closure, a small victory in our quest for healing and safety. But we knew that our journey was far from over. The trial was just one chapter in our story, a pivotal moment that allowed us to reclaim our power and shed the weight of victimhood. As we walked away from the courthouse hand in hand, Emily turned to me, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Sarah, we did it," she whispered. "We fought for our lives, and we won. Now we can build a future free from fear." I smiled, a mix of emotions washing over me. "Yes, Emily," I replied, my voice filled with determination. "We have reclaimed our lives, and now we can move forward, stronger than ever. Together, we'll heal, we'll thrive, and we'll ensure that our voices are heard." And so the trial marked a turning point in our journey, a testament to our resilience and a stepping stone towards a future where the wounds of the past would no longer define us. We were survivors, warriors who refused to be silenced, and we were ready to face the world with renewed strength and hope. The trial marked the end of one chapter in our lives, and as the dust settled, we embraced the opportunity for a fresh start, a chance to rebuild and find solace in a future free from the shadow of abuse. With a renewed sense of purpose, Emily and I set out to create a new beginning for ourselves. We found a small, cozy apartment that became our sanctuary, a place where healing could take root and where we could nurture our newfound independence. The walls echoed with laughter, and the rooms overflowed with the warmth of sisterhood. One evening, as we sat on our balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky with vibrant hues, Emily turned to me, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Sarah, do you ever think about what could have been?" she asked, her voice tinged with both sadness and I paused for a moment, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. Sometimes I replied softly, "But dwelling on the past won't change it. What matters is that we have the opportunity to create a different future, a future where love, respect, and safety prevail." She smiled, a flicker of light returning to her eyes. "You're right, Sarah. We have the power to break free from the cycle that consumed our lives. And not just for ourselves, but for others who may be trapped in similar situations." As the days turned into weeks, we dedicated ourselves to raising awareness about domestic violence. We joined support groups, shared our stories, and offered a helping hand to those who needed it most. Through speaking engagements and advocacy work, we became beacons of hope, lighting the way for others to escape the darkness and find their own paths to healing. In the process, we built a community of survivors, united in our shared experiences and collective strength. Together, we lifted each other up, reminding ourselves that we were not defined by our past, but rather by our resilience and the determination to create a brighter future. One evening, at a support group meeting, I listened as a fellow survivor shared her journey of overcoming abuse. Her words resonated deeply within me, and I knew it was time to take a step further. "Thank you for sharing your story," I said, standing up with a newfound resolve. "We are all warriors, and our voices hold immense power. It's time we use that power to bring about real change. The room filled with applause and supportive murmurs, igniting a fire within me. Emily stood beside me, her eyes sparkling with pride. "We've come so far," she said, her voice filled with determination. "And now we have the chance to make a difference in the lives of others. Let's seize it." Together, we founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising awareness, providing support, and advocating for survivors of domestic violence. We offered counseling services, legal assistance, and educational programs, working tirelessly to break the cycle of abuse within our community. As time passed, our organization grew, touching the lives of countless individuals. The pain of our past fueled our determination to create a future where no one would suffer in silence, where love and respect would be the foundations of every relationship. In the midst of our advocacy work, we found our own healing. The scars remained a reminder of our strength, but they no longer defined us. We embraced a newfound sense of joy and self-discovery, embracing opportunities for growth and embracing the beauty of life's small pleasures. And so, as we walked hand in hand, gazing at the horizon of endless possibilities, we knew that our journey was far from over. We had transformed our pain into purpose, our past into a source of empowerment. With hearts full of compassion and spirits aflame with resilience, we embraced our new beginning, ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that together we were unstoppable.